S7-200 training with Siemens Step 7 Micro Win. And we're going to get right into programming. The first thing we look at is over here we have the toolbox. The toolbox is where all the tools are that we're going to use to make this PLC run. When we make changes to anything in our program, it's going to show up right up here in the tree. For instance, when we start writing program code, all our blocks of code will show up in this program block. Right here we have our instructions, and so we'll come here anytime we need to use one. I'm going to start by using BitLogic, normally open, and an output. And I'm going to address that as input 0.0 and output 0.0. Now we have to look at addressing, and if I go to this sheet, which I'll also supply, we can see inputs are in this format: I, and then a byte number, dot, bit number. The Siemens S7-200 is a byte-based PLC. Everything is in bytes. And so our inputs start at input byte 0, bit 0, through bit 7. That gives us 8 bits. There's 8 bits to a byte. And once that byte is used up, we move on to input 1, byte 1, bit 0, through bit 7. And we can go all the way up through byte 31. Byte 31, bit 7 is our final input, depending on how many cards we have on our PLC. The outputs are treated the same. Output is Q, Q0.0 through Q0.7. Once that's used up, we'd move on to Q1.0, and so on. Internal memory we'll get into shortly, and that's going to be the same. M is for memory, and those are internal. They're not driven by hard wiring. They're just bits that are stored in the PLC. So getting back to our PLC program, I'm also going to give these names. So I'm going to right-click, define symbol, and I'll just call this first input. And I'll call this one first output. Now to download, I can just hit the download button. I do have a compile button over here, but when I hit download, it's going to compile anyway, so really I could ignore that button. Also, I could hit communications to set up my communications to the PLC, but if they're not set up correctly, they're going to trigger when I hit download, just like this. And so now I'll hit communications. My cable is not plugged in. If I plug in my cable, now I can set it up by double-clicking here. And I want to use a PC PPI cable. And my PC is going to be address 1. I am assuming that my PLC is at the default of 9.6K. That's what they come from Siemens as. I'm using USB, not a serial. And so I'll hit OK all the way out. And now I'm going to go look for the PLC. Now one sidebar is if I double click on this PLC that I found, I can go see all kinds of information, like how fast it's scanning, if I have any cards added onto the PLC, which I don't. I have 24 inputs on this PLC starting at I0.0, and I have 16 outputs starting at Q0.0. If it's not highlighted, I would single click to highlight and hit OK. And at this point, my communications button disappears. Now I'm talking to the PLC, and forever this download will show up. We'll get back to these checkboxes later. They are important, but at this time we'll skip them. I hit download, and do you want to stop the PLC? Yes. Typically you never need to hit the run switch on the PLC itself. You just do it from your laptop. I'll put the PLC into run, and we'll move on to the next section.